This is the Requiem Metal Podcast, episode 53, Kylesa. This is the Requiem Metal Podcast, episode 53, Kylesa.
just heard What Becomes an End from Kylesa here on the Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm Mark.
And this week we shall be exploring the roots of Savannah, Georgia's Kylesa, which is kind of, a hybrid type band, which has kind of been a theme of ours the last, couple months of kind of focusing on your, Tombs or Obscura or, these Hood at Menace, bands that are just sort of like almost undefinably many genres all at once,
Yeah, not trying to be anything than what they are. They're just kind of wearing their influences on their sleeve, but they don't. Their influences don't necessarily put them in any pin them in any kind of certain genre.
Sure,
it's almost the first we've really seen of this, where we talked about this I think last week or week before, just how this is an era when music is so accessible that it's all penetrating into these bands.
Yeah,
we were coming up with some really unique stuff.
Yeah, and it's just a band like this that initially, with a song like What Becomes an End has obviously a doom, stoner, sludge rock, sludgecore kind of vibe to it, but it also goes into a ton of different territories, which we'll kind of be talking about. In particular, you can hear like a kind of a Testament thrash / bolt thrower kind of groove. You picked that up right away.
That bolt thrower riff, that as soon as it starts to sound like a bolt thrower riff, they start slowing the timing down on it.
Exactly. And just sort of that repetition and those kind of things, and then like the guitar solo in that song.
It's like fucking Queens of the Stone Age and like Electric Wizard, are jamming out.
Exactly. So it's plus like the Slayerism to it too. Like you said, it was like what did you say? It's like Slayer as if played for like through the sensibilities of like Queens of the Stone Age or something like that. I remember you said something.
Oh, I said something earlier. Pretty compelling, but I don't
it was kind of profound, in fact. But I forgot what it was. But
every podcast I'm on, people tell me I say something profound. I never remember what it is.
I said it was like Slayer and LSD, like riding a magic carpet or something like that. I don't know. Which reminds me of the illustration you did for Decibel with Mastodon riding the magic carpet. But
hopefully there'll be options as a T-shirt. That'd be great.
That'd be kind of neat. That could be our Requiem podcast. It could be you and I on a magic carpet with Mastodon.
There you go.
But that's from the not the latest Kylesa, which we'll be kind of focusing on a little bit later, but from the second to last one from 2006, which is called Time Will Fuse Its Worth. And you'll hear more tunes from that record as well. But I thought that was a good kicker offer. Full of energy, full of a little piss and vinegar for the kids out there. But what's interesting about Kylesa is, I was telling Mark this, just like for, 3 or 4 weeks ago when you heard Mark talking about Funeral Mist, Kylesa is something I've been aware of for a while, and it sort of crept up on me really about a month ago when I picked up Static Tensions, and I've kind of slowly been like listening to it and kind of having these holy cow, like these guys
the
are
previous one you kind of just
really
bought,
sweet,
shelved and kind of forgot about.
Yeah, I think I had read about this one that you just heard the song from, the What Becomes an End song, and like the cover kind of looked like, I don't know, it's like a tree root or tree limb sort of growing, and it had this red orange kind of the Southwest aesthetic to it or something. And, I bought it, and I think it wasn't what I thought it was going to be at the time. And so I kind of like shelved it.
That's kind of that Torch was for me.
Yeah. And I think I kind of dismissed it as like hipster or something like that, and then I kind of have gone back and, since obviously listened to that record, now that I bought the new one, and I'm like, oh, this old one's pretty sweet too. Like what the heck was I thinking? So anyways, long story short, just like from Mark, the Funeral Mist kind of caught you and compelled you to want to do a podcast for Funeral Mist. This, I kind of called Mark up. I'm like, dude, you got to listen to Static Tensions. This new Kylesa is blowing my mind right now. And then
luckily I got a iTunes gift card in the mail, and
there you go. And you get to kind of rock it out quite a bit. So this is Kylesa's been around for a little while.
Was it they have 4 records out or 3?
4 full lengths.
Full lengths.
Several singles and then an EP, and we'll play a song off one of the EPs. We'll probably skip the first record, which is their self-titled, that was put out in 2002. It's it's decent, but it's like the very first like Caius thing, Wretch. It's there, but it's not completely necessary.
Familiar with it?
Yeah, it's something I just got in the last couple days.
Yeah.
But the band hails from Savannah, Georgia, and they obviously are taking like the traditional.
Isn't that where Mastodon's from as well? Or they're from South Carolina or something, right?
Well, Kylesa recorded in South Carolina at the Jam Room. But no, half the members of Mastodon are from Georgia. I don't know if it's Savannah or not, but it might be. Or is it... no, it's not Athens. That's REM.
Whatever. That same
Georgia
area.
Same state. Something. And they're bringing, obviously, the, Mastodon's, I think, a good kind of tipping point. Mastodon, Keel Hall, Meat Jack, I Hate God. All these sort of like hybrid sludgecore, hardcore, stoner kind of bands. I think that's where their initial roots were in. But I think they're also very kind of fascinated by sort of like 70s psychedelic kind of rock. And even like later on stuff, you'll hear much more, I guess, like krautrock can type kind of.
Well, I was even hearing. I listened on the way up to record these. I was listening to the record in the car, a couple, 3-4 times, and I was hearing a lot of like Anathema Pentecost 3 kind of like pummeling doom,
which is interesting because I totally missed that. I wasn't even that came out of left field to me, and once you pointed it out, I could totally hear that sort of like that just.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Just like Pentecost 3 is kind of a bizarre record either.
Well, even like Serenades has some of that.
Yeah, it does.
That same kind of plotting, and if you go back to I don't even know, podcast number like 15 or 14.
Go look in our archives; it's there.
Yeah. If you want to hear the early Anathema stuff, we do a whole podcast on it. But that plotting kind of like doom, but mixed with like flares of like psychedelia, Pink Floyd or something.
A little bit of like ISIS sensibility, not necessarily in tone or anything, but a little bit in the approach, because the whole ISIS thing's thrown around so much as far as people sounding like them. But
I hear it on one song we're going to play tonight in particular reminded me of like Celestial, which is some older ISIS, just in its sort of approach and kind of its sparseness in a way. But definitely. I mean, Kylesa threw me for a loop, and trying to categorize these guys is real tough. They have sort of a couple of interesting things going for them, and I think that's why I dismissed them as a hipster band, because I remember reading that, it's a male-female kind of dual vocal kind of thing,
we've been burned from that in the past in other genres. So
exactly. So I kind of like had my kind of doubts about it, and the two main vocalists and guitar players are Philip Cope, and then the woman in the band is Laura Pleasance, and you'll hear some of the screams and wails that she does is pretty hair raising. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of the Alyssa Williams, or not Alyssa Williams, Alyssa, I can't remember her last name, from Disrupt.
Yeah, she's not quite as visceral as she is, but
no, but like she's got like a more melodic visceralness or something, that.
Yeah, it's a little bit more
refined, maybe, or.
It's still like up front, but it's not as. I guess like blood curdling is disruptive.
Yeah, there you go. That's the word.
But we were talking here like a lot of like Fugazi type elements and stuff in here as well, hardcore stuff,
and you even mentioned Dead Kennedys flew out at you. Yeah, just like tunes.
some of the vocal arrangements and stuff were just reminding me of some of that older stuff.
And I think what will end up kind of happening, or what I sort of went through and did as I listened to like a lot of this stuff, is the same thing like what I did when we did our Pig Destroyer show way back. I just like wrote down like names of bands that like I could like almost hear in each song, because each song is so like completely different from the last one. Yet there's like this thematic connection of like the
there's a sonic continuity to the whole thing, where it's not as like the Bareness record I think is a little bit more all over the place, more so. This has a nice cohesive feel. It feels like one record.
Yeah. And now that, like, it's interesting to kind of go back and look at some of the early stuff that they did, which we'll start off with here in a moment. And the roots of all that sort of stuff were there. It just wasn't completely fully fleshed out yet. It was, I don't want to say lazy, but like if you hear like their second full length, for instance, which is called To Walk a Middle Course, which is what we're going to open the next set up with, a tune off of that. And then like the EP that follows, which is a 100 Degree Heat Index EP, and there's a little bit of, especially in 100 Degree Heat Index, a little bit of laziness to the songwriting. They let some of the songs go on maybe a little too long, because I think they're kind of into that psychedelic kind of like
letting it kind of wander and find itself. Yeah.
And I think what they've done, like they started to do on the album that we just heard, the Time Will Fuse Its Worth, and especially on the new one, Static Tensions, is they really kind of focus on the songwriting stuff and how do you bring those elements into it the kitchen sink per se.
Yeah.
But still like write like songs that have kind of some catchier elements to them that actually are kind of focused. You know?
Yeah, they cut 90% of the fat out.
Yeah, a lot of it.
It's big kind of growth.
And so that's kind of cool to kind of see the development. It's really interesting. You mentioned Torch, because I was talking to my buddy Luke today about this band. He's like, oh yeah, I've heard of Kylesa and I've read about him, but I've never actually heard him and stuff. And I said, you know, call it a hunch, and I'm just going to say it now. I'm going to go on the air and state this, but I said in the same way that I think a record like last year's Torch started to pick up some momentum because it just was so like cross hybrid, you know, and it kind of like fit into so many different people's kind of back pockets. I could see Kylesa sort of being like a dark horse and ending up as like a top 5 album of the year kind of candidate in a lot of magazines.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more interesting record personally than the Torch. I think the Torch is interesting, but it's not breaking so much new ground that it would be like, you know, my number one pick of the best extreme record of the year.
I think what happened with Torch last year is that I don't think anyone would have said that it was the best record of the year, but I think enough people had it like as number 3 or 4 that by the law of averages, it was sort of like a record that showed up on everyone's kind of list somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas like Knock Mystium was maybe like a divider record, or Opeth was a divider record. So it split votes almost, whereas like everybody can listen to that Torch and go, that's a nice record. I mean, it sounds good. It's
as far as
easy to listen to.
Across the board appeal and stuff.
Kind of like Cave in Jupiter or something like that. Like what can?
Although that's kind of divisive too.
Well, at the time, but I think now if you put that on for anyone, they're kind of like, yeah, I like some parts of it, and you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but I think there's just sort of like there's an easiness. Like Torch isn't like attacking anyone. You know, it's not gonna like bother anybody if you hear Torch. Like if you walked into like a record store or something.
It's not grating or it's. Yeah,
it's just sort of a pleasant listen, and so I feel like Kylesa has some of those elements too. Like there's a warmth to sort of what they're doing,
an upbeatness to it, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, you know, so kind of the exact opposite of what we did with your kind of find of last month, which was Funeral Mist.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up her personality.
Hey, you know. Yeah, Mark's more of a Death Smell Omega guy. I guess I'm more of like a happy stoner rock kind of guy or something. But anyhow, we're gonna jump into some things here. But just to give you like a little bit of background, I'm no Kylesa expert because I've just sort of recently discovered the band. But apparently, a lot of the people came from a band called Damad, which seemed to have quite a bit of street cred from what I've kind of reading about. Kind of like how the Tombs came from.
From Anodyne?
Yeah, and stuff like that. So these people have been around for a little while, you know, and they put their debut out in 2002, and then the EP that we're going to hear 100 Degree Heat Index from was put out in 2004. And then the first song we're going to hear, which is In Memory, comes from their second full-length record, which is To Walk a Middle Course. So can't get away from that Industrial Factory. keeps jing jing. So anyways, we're gonna bug out here for a second on In Memory, and what's cool about this song is there's a real like black metal vibe kind of going on for it. I mean, that was something you point out right away.
Was that with a blast?
Well, it's not just the blast, but it has that. It's a song with a really kind of uneasy Slayer kind of slow darkness. And then, and then like Laura has these really uneasy vocals, these kind of like talking vocals, almost like the little girl on Dead Skin Mask or something, where it's just slightly unsettling and dark, you know, in a way. But there's definitely a darkness here that I don't think they ever really come back to. So it's kind of a cool starting point because it shows you like, you know, kind of where they started and where they're going to end up, which is more sort of, like you said, happy and upbeat.
So where does I don't think we actually mentioned it. We talked around it a little bit. The whole double drummer thing.
Oh yeah. I was getting to that.
Did that start on this record here?
I don't know if it's on this record because I actually don't own a gem copy of this to look into the stuff right offhand. I do know that the drummer, that the double drum kind of started to get attention on their third full length, which is, you know, The Time Will Fuse Its Worth, which is kind of like their breakthrough record. I think this is their very first record that we're about to hear that was on Prosthetic, which is the label they're still on today. Okay. And Prosthetics, like, you know, Gojira and
they get a pretty interesting catalog.
Yeah. Isn't that Withered? Aren't they on Prosthetic?
Yeah, Withered.
Well, I mean, Albert's a big fan of it, so, you know,
I just got that. I'm just upset because I got burned on one of those. It was touted as being you gotta hear this, and then I was just like, this is the most derivative piece of crap.
Well, maybe it's like Kylesa. Maybe you thought it was something, and if you pull it out and listen to it,
I think totally I sold it.
Okay, there you go. Never mind. Experiment
never
over.
To return.
Experiment over. But yeah, they do have 2 drummers that drum on the band, Eric Hernandez and Carl McGinley, and these 2 guys. They, especially on the newer record, they don't exploit it a lot because they kind of said, we don't want to turn this into like the gimmick of the band. We want it to like accentuate when it makes sense.
It felt like having Janet Gears and Iron Maiden, like, why do you need 3 guitar players? You guys never do anything with 3 guitar players outside of rotating 3 leads. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing that kind of, it just was like a red flag, like, oh, this is kind of BS. This is obviously their like calling card for individuality or something. And really it's an interesting, the only band I've ever seen with 2 drummers before live was, I saw Ministry on the Psalm 69 tour. They did some pretty interesting stuff with that. But he was more just pumping the sound. I imagine it's probably more interesting in a live setting.
Yeah.
And they really only use it to good effect, I think, in a couple songs in certain areas.
Sure. Yeah, and I think a couple of the tunes that we aren't playing tonight, like more instrumental type tunes, you can hear they kind of like get more jam bandy a little bit, and then
one guy's doing like a roll while the other guy's doing some tom playing. And stuff.
So there's some kind of neat things there, and then later on with a song called like "Said and Done," which is from the new record, and that's the one where the guy's kind of doing blast beats underneath while
the other guy's doing a standard beat.
Doing some stuff. That's kind of a cool way.
It just seems like a logistic thing, like for the amount of.
Well, just loading up all the equipment.
Yeah, you got 2 drum sets. That's a lot of crap.
Yeah.
And then then you got to split it up, X amount of ways, and how much is this really affecting? So I'd like to see them live to see if it really affects the live.
And I wonder how the songwriting process goes for the drummers, like how they kind of suss that all out. Because I know Fugazi on their last couple records had 2 drummers as well.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if because
but they're both playing super stripped down kits, and it's more like almost like a street drumming kind of effect that they pulled off on those. But.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it looks like live too when Kylesa does it, or just sort of adds a more bombastic sound. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about maybe going to check these guys out because they're opening for Mastodon's headline tour that's going on right now. So if you like this stuff, you like Mastodon, hey, check it out in your hometown, I guess. So, but anyways, we're gonna get into some In Memory here. And one thing in particular about this whole record, this Tawaka Middle Course, is it's got a real Souls at Zero neurosis kind of feel to it in terms of the vocals and just some different things. And I forgot to mention this, Alex Newport produced this first one.
From Nail Bomb and
Fudge Tunnel. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Isn't that kind of interesting?
Yeah, I've always
it almost
liked
makes sense because Fudge Tunnel was so undefinable in its own weird way, too.
That's almost a show.
Yeah, that's true.
8 songs in D minor is a pretty good record.
I love it. That is a pretty sweet record. I don't know. I'm a big Nail Bomb fan too. I know you never familiarize yourself with that.
I've just probably, it just had a reputation. I was like, yeah.
I think you'd like it more now because you're kind of away from that whole.
Yeah, the pretensions.
We have to be like street cred and stuff.
Cavultness.
Yeah. So, anyways, enjoy In Memory, and then 100 Degree Heat Index, and then we're gonna hit you up with their kind of first big single, which is Hollow Severer. that was Hollow Sever 100-degree heat index, and then we started things off with the very kind of dark, evil Oven Memory. And 100-degree heat index, just a couple words about that. That just is sort of that's almost like sort of the perfect kind of the personification of their kind of when they're in their sleep, high on fire, sludgecore, stoner.
Yeah, there's a little bit of high on fire to this as well. Not just to almost just the effect of how driving it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes from an EP, which also had a really kind of hip Nausea cover. And I don't know much about Nausea, but it was real catchy. But Hollow Server, you've seen the video to this, right?
Well, that and then just the first thing I thought of right off, not even really thinking, just first thing that popped to my mind was it felt like an Andrew WK song.
Oh, like, that's right.
How like it sounds like a bunch of kids like
let's get pumped up, boom, boom, boom. Exactly.
Party hard kind of like excitement.
It swings.
Yeah, and it's really rare to hear something that's that heavy, but still, I mean, it's like people are like rejoicing as they're singing. It's pretty cool.
I wrote down, actually, before you even said that, this is from this morning, before you even showed up, I wrote, swings like Queens of the Stone Age, like early, especially like Songs from the Dead, or Songs for the Deaf, kind of like how that had, Dave Grohl put such a kind of a rhythmic swing into the drum grooves and stuff. But it also sort of just a stock kind of psychedelic Kylesa type kind of band. They always mention that like their kind of big three influences that they always sort of gravitate back to for some odd reason is Kylesa, Black Sabbath, and Bolt Thrower.
Bolt Thrower, man,
I love it. I love it. And here all these years we thought Hatebreed was like the only band that really totally ripped off Bolt Thrower, and which you don't want to talk about Hatebreed because they suck.
And what about that band that was on Heaven Shall Burn? Boy, they love Bolt Thrower there.
Caliban and Heaven Shall Burn. But more Heaven Shall Burn. Yeah, the Life Force days.
Yeah, there's more people need to be taking a little bit of that Bolt Thrower oomph and adding it in.
I love it, and we're gonna see Bolt Thrower pretty soon here.
Thank God. Last time I was, not to go off too much of a tangent, but it was like in '97, the old Milwaukee Metal Fest. Bolt Thrower was supposed to show up.
Oh, and they didn't show.
Well, Carl got stuck in customs because he was drunk, got in a fight or something. So hopefully he can, it's been several years. He's an older gentleman.
12 years older and wiser.
Hopefully he can keep his hands to himself and, and scream out some Warmaster. And
I'm worried about Joe, the bassist. She could get some.
I think she's the most together out of the entire group. So, yeah.
That's good. But you've seen the video to this, and you were saying something about it.
It's all like bizarre claymation. It's like the absolute antithesis of a Tool video.
Okay. I was gonna say that's what strikes me when you say like
it almost looks like bizarre little Mr. Bill people moving around, and
all right,
the band's playing with almost like an old the old like Sabbath videos where they've got like the rainbow gels on them and stuff. That's kind of the vibe I got.
Nice.
Just the guy screaming on the microphone.
Now it seems like prosthetic. Actually, was it like a pretty well done video for the most part, or?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a high budget, but I mean, anymore you can get away with doing pretty. I mean, look at that Gojira video that they shot on Red camera. That's something they shot for next to nothing, but the camera technology is unbelievable now. Yeah, what you can do with editing.
Seems like prosthetic kind of puts a little bit of value in terms of trying to sell their bands. In that sort of way, because that was like a big single, and I think that's what really kind of got them a lot of attention. Yeah, it was on Headbangers Ball and stuff like that. So yeah, I doubt it was on mainstream and
probably not. I haven't seen MTV in years, so I have no idea.
You're not missing much.
Headbangers Ball still on?
Yeah, I don't know if it's on tonight. I think it's
Josta is still on it.
Probably. Speaking of Hatebreed,
Tool. Yeah.
Oh god. Anyways, that's probably why I don't watch it, because I just don't even want to see him. Be like, dude, I'm getting pumped. Like, let's fight. Or whatever the hell he does. But we're gonna.
He gets excited about bands he knows nothing or cares nothing about. So
it's almost worse than the fake Ricky Rackman like interviewing. And
I'd rather see that douchebag from Fozzy talk about with bands. Chris Jericho.
Oh yeah.
Unless you're listening to the podcast, and then you're.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris Jericho, if you're out there.
Please don't. Yeah.
Retired from a wrestling
suplex
match.
Me on the floor.
That'd be pretty cool. But now with this tune, we're into their third full length, which is really, I think, the album that kind of blew them up. And this is the first one that I kind of got, which was the Time Will Fuse Its Worth. And, we already talked about What Becomes an End and then this. And we're going to hear a couple more tunes from this record, Between Silence and Sound and Identity Defined. And what you're going to hear here with the Between Silence and Sound, this is the one that has, to me, like a real stark celestial vibe to it in the sort of intro. It's kind of got this, ISIS build to it. But it's a little bit more uneasy as well. It's like a little darker. There's like kind of some weird I hate God-isms that are kind of floating throughout it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how familiar you are with EHG, if you were ever like a big fan of them or not.
Yeah, their first 3 records.
Okay, you were kind of
Take As Needed stuff. And, what the hell is it?
In the Name of Suffering.
In the Name of Suffering. Yeah, those are the 2 that after that, I haven't really heard much of anything. I've heard like Dope Sick.
Dope Sick's
very
all right,
average.
but the first 2 are sort of like,
Sister Effer.
Yeah, that's a good one. I saw them play that when I saw them open for Pantera and White Zombie when we were in high school, and everybody at the show hated I Hate God.
Oh man, I wish I saw Pantera when Crowbar open.
Well, see, we
I almost got killed.
EHG and Deftones open, so it was two quality bands. That's where I got my Deftones knitted hat that I still wear. 13 years later or something, or 12 years later. But anyways, like when they came on stage and they said they were gonna play that song, like everyone just like was trying to get out of the stadium.
God, I don't know if I've seen I Hate God or not. I think they might have been at some festival, or I kind of remember them being completely, everybody in the crowd was just like
hating.
Why?
Oh yeah, it's kind of like when you see the Melvins. I kind of love it because it pisses everyone else off.
Play 20 minutes of feedback.
Yeah, exactly. It's brilliant. So, but anyways, you kind of hear some of those kind of elements, and really some awesome screams from Laura, just like screaming at the top of her lungs. But yet it's all through like the scope of this very psychedelic kind of proggy song. It's probably, I think, the longest song we'll play tonight. It's just over 6 minutes. And it's got like a real like Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd vibe to it, as well as like her screaming over it. So
yeah,
pretty cool tune. And then more upbeat kind of tune called Identity Defined, which has more of like the hardcore vibe that you said you kind of picked up, kind of layered with some Melvins, I hate, electric wizardisms kind of thing. So, and the grind groove returns, the bolt thrower kind of grindy things. And this tune, the second tune, you'll kind of start to hear the real good use of the 2 drums. I think for the first time, you'll kind of really start to be aware. And then we're going to close things off with another great 2-drum tune. And this is the first tune we're going to hear from Static Tensions, Just Said and Done. And we'll talk more about that, but pay attention for the blast beats on that one. I think you'll enjoy. So here's Between Silence and Sound from Kylesa's third full-length record. That was Said and Done, Identity Defined Between Silence and Sound. And Said and Done kind of introduces us to the latest one from 2009, which is Static Tensions. And
when did this come out, do you know? Was it like
it was reviewed like two issues ago in Decibel.
So probably came out in
Brutal Truth
February or March or something?
I think I got this in March.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it got a 9, which sort of like, kind of threw me for a loop. And it was Kevin Stewart Panko, and he's usually kind of right on. He's not some, kind of flash in the pan reviewer. So I kind of said, it was like an impulse buy. I was like, I think I remember kind of liking the last one. It's filed away.
Yeah.
Kind of forgetting that I really hadn't paid much attention to it, and then I bought it. And the cover in particular is kind of interesting. It's done by John Dyer Baisley from.
Is it the same guy that did the Last Pig Destroyer cover?
I don't know if it's a.
It's a really similar kind of like tattoo line art kind of style. Very illustration heavy.
Yeah,
which is something we don't really see a whole lot. The cover is kind of bizarre. It looks like somebody pulling a.
Looks like eyeballs.
I immediately just thought
eyeball nipple.
A bunch of testicles hanging from somebody's lips, but
yeah,
it's a really interesting cover.
It's pretty cool, and if I remember right, the Baroness cover is really sweet too. It's same artist.
That's
that
right.
Did the Baroness cover. So,
yeah.
But before that,
I actually like this better than the Baroness cover.
Yeah, because I like the colors actually, which is weird because I usually don't like fuchsia, but.
Yeah, but in the right context, fuchsia's okay.
It kind of works, I used to be a Hot Pink fan back in the early Andre Agassi days.
I was more 80s. Of a neon green fan.
Neon green, yeah.
The gotcha t-shirts, yeah.
Yeah, neon pink was what I was all about. Magenta, get after
burn the rods and cones your eyes right out color.
Heck yeah. And what's cool about this record too is it's the first time that Laura Pleasance hasn't done the artwork, and so they're bringing in some outside artists, and I think they're just really starting to get kind of the focus down. And if you read in Decibel, which kind of really piqued my interest about this record as well, they said like the kind of two things that they were listening to the most when they were recording this record were Fugazi and Slayer Seasons of the Abyss, which was like a big like flag like signaling me like this is a record you might like a lot more than you think. Like that's just such two like left field choices that I kind of was intrigued a little bit. And then a song we're gonna open the next setup with, Unknown Awareness. This song kind of really hooked me. It's the same song that kind of hooked you as well.
Yeah, it was the first one that really. That's the first one that really popped out.
Exactly.
Just like where's this like riff coming from? This like really melodic riff that kind of throws. I don't think
it's almost shoegazery. Yeah, Catatonian.
It's the mix. Yeah, shoegaze with like weird like old Peaceful 3 kind of. It's really kind of bizarre. It's not indicative of any one thing. It's their own. It's seeing it through their own lens, for sure. And
I even threw in the fact that this record has some moments that are as oddly defining as did, Great Deceiver on the Venom Well Deceived record, their first full length that they did.
Oh, Venom Well Designed.
Yeah, well designed.
Yeah.
When I say deceived, yeah.
Great Deceiver.
Great Deceiver, there.
It's getting late, that's all right.
But how that had like these sort of like at the gateisms mixed
Joy Division with bizarre industrial stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it was shoegazer kind of thrown in and like sort of shimmering throughout it, kind of like how Dalik does some of their like hip hop. It's just like, it's filled with all these kitchen sink of things. But Said and Done, the song we just heard there, that really just has that sort of those grind blast beats mixed in with sort of like a Mastodon kind of groove and stuff. So you kind of get a real good feel of like what they could do if they use that sort of 2-drummer approach like all the time, and Static Tensions in particular, like we said earlier, is just sort of more streamlined. The songs are a little shorter, they're a little bit more focused, and it kind of I think works better for the band than some of the stuff you heard on the last couple records.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. This is like being this is the fourth
record. Yeah,
it seems like they're kind of on a nice clip to where they're gonna just keep getting better and better, and it's not a splash in the pan type. Like we just do this unbelievable record and then we can't ever capture it again. It seems like they're like refining. Just get like the next one should be just like holy crap.
And I think like I see them. I've heard a lot of people when I went online to sort of see what people were saying about the band and different things. A lot of people, and I didn't almost find this surprising, but a lot of people were saying like, take this Mastodon, this is what we wanted the new Mastodon to sound like, and there were a lot of like swipes at Mastodon in a way.
I have no problem with that Mastodon.
And I love the new Mastodon.
I like it more than the last record. I think it's more consistent.
Yeah, that I would agree with.
It seems not that it needs to be.
So.
Yeah, it's not that it needs to be consistent, but it felt more. The last Mastodon was more. It was more piecemeal. It was just like a bunch of ideas just thrown together. It didn't feel like it was well thought out enough.
Yeah, like Leviathan and Remission like have like great.
Yeah,
flow
and I thought at first I thought these these like Ozzy-ish vocals are kind of stupid, but then I was like, that's the first time I've actually heard an Ozzy kind of vocal that actually works.
And there's even like, it's not just like Black Sabbath Ozzy. Like to me, there's like some real Diary of a Madman.
Oh yeah,
kind of, like,
I think it's. I don't really picture. I don't see a whole lot of Sabbath Ozzy at all. It's all later on stuff for me.
Yeah,
is what I'm hearing.
It's kind of hip and weird because you don't hear that.
It works and they've actually kept the like the manic construction of stuff. But we don't want to turn this into a Mastodon show.
But I think with that record and getting back to Kylesa too, is I think that when you have such a feverish fan base as Mastodon does, and they blew up so much bigger than I think everybody expected them to at first.
Bigger than they ever thought they were.
Yeah. I think that put a certain amount of uncertain expectations on them, and they're kind of just going in their own direction. I think ultimately people will come back to Mastodon and recognize how brilliant, like even a record like Cross the Sky is and stuff like that.
Crack the Sky.
Crack the Sky. When I say Cross the Sky.
Yeah, and the funny thing with that, not to keep going down the Mastodon jag, but it's not at all more mainstream.
Yeah. No.
So it's not like they're turning, they're like turning their head to, or turning their back on their fans to go like in this other direction just to make money.
Yeah.
It's not about, record sales anymore. It's about concerts.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I could see, whereas like Mastodon's becoming more of like a jam band and like more proggy, Kylesa is almost moving the opposite direction. They're like getting more concise and writing sort of like shorter nuggets of songs or something. So I think there's people that feel betrayed by the direction Mastodon's going in, who like kind of found it with Kylesa's new record, because I think they came out in the same month. So I think there's just some comparison there. They're both kind of southern sludge rock hybrid kind of bands, So, anyways, they're apples and oranges to me. I like both for different reasons, but yeah, I started to see a lot of discussion online about that. It was kind of fascinating that so many people were bringing up like, this is what the new Mastodon should have sounded like. I'm like, really? With two drummers and a girl? Like, come on. It's not even like the...
Anytime,
not even the same, like, ballpark
the drumming's not even the same... It's not even the same...
approach.
No, not at all.
So. I don't know. It's kind of strange.
But yeah, anytime people say, "Oh, this is what this thing should have sounded like," that's just a crappy excuse for somebody to grab some eyeballs with that kind of title. Oh, this is what the last Layer record sound like. I should really check this thing out.
Yeah,
it's just lack of having a better way to describe it.
Well,
so I see
it's like people like like try and compare like Dimmu Borgir to Enslaved and say that they're both black metal. It's like.
With
Slave's not playing black metal.
With Funeral Mist, I was reading a review where somebody compared the new Funeral Mist to later Dimmu Borgir. And I was like, are you kidding me? What are you, 10 years old?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the great thing about the internet is everybody can do whatever, but that's also the bad part of it.
It's a wonderful thing about democracy. Everybody's got a voice, but
there's no journalistic integrity. Yeah.
So, but we're going to open things up with the Unknown Awareness tune, which we were kind of talking about, has this sort of like tribal throb to the percussion and these sort of psychedelic shoegazer kind of moments kind of, mixed in and floating through and stuff. And then we'll bridge into Running Red, which both you and I
this first thing, Amorphous has total keyboard, not necessarily the tone, but it's almost the exact form of the keyboard as it's being played,
which I think both stole from 70s prog rock.
Oh, totally. It's like Camel kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like that common interest brought like Finland and
and Georgia together as kissing cousins.
Yes, great. Kind of more. But don't worry, the song doesn't stay in that Amorphous vibe. If you're not an Amorphous fan, it actually kind of moves more into a Slayer vibe with some real
it's really interesting.
That's Running Red is a pretty hip tune. So, and it's got some Eastern kind of stuff, Eastern scales and things. And then we'll close things out with Almost Lost, which if you're a Fugazi fan and you like kind of the sing-song kind of stuff, I think you'll dig this song. So enjoy Unknown Awareness from Kylesa. was Almost Lost, and Running Red, and Unknown Awareness. And you can find all three of those, of course, on Static Tension's brand new Kylesa record, which you
can see links on requiempodcast.com to get these records. And by you getting these records through these specific links, this will give us a little bit of kickback to pay for our web hosting costs and microphones and laptops and all that sorts of things.
All of
our operating costs, because we don't make any money doing this. This is a service to the metal fan base.
It's like NPR. We can't offer you opera tickets for donations, but
we're a nonprofit. We don't make any money doing this. I'd like to have that be said right now, because that would be illegal for us to be playing music without paying our Creative Commons license and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So this is all free. We don't make any money.
We do it because we enjoy it for you people.
That's
out
right.
there.
Well, we enjoy it. We like to talk about it, so why not make it productive and throw it in a podcast?
We stick a microphone in front of. Basically, these are sort of the sort of off the top of our head stream of consciousness, like, ridiculous conversations that Mark and I have been having for 10 years. So we figured, why not just
let's capture this for posterity.
Exactly. So, and if you have comments that you'd like to send to us and feedback about this band or about any of the other podcasts that we've heard, or that you've heard, excuse me, please send us an email to requiempodcast@gmail.com, or go to talkshoe.com or iTunes, leave us a comment there, or go to the website that Mark just mentioned.
Yep, requiempodcast.com, and leave us comments. Leave us a link on your blog. If you're a Twitter follower, follow me at Mark_Rudolph and keep abreast of all the fancy Requiem news as it happens. You'll know the second a new podcast goes up.
When Mark goes to the bathroom, he's going to let you know.
No, it's not
going to the bathroom.
It's all productive stuff. So what is it? Mark_Rudolph at Twitter.
Cool. And hopefully by the time that this podcast airs, I'd imagine that everything will kind of be updated and stuff on the website with updated playlists and
fairly
links.
Soon. Yeah, I'm moving, so it's going to be a treat.
Mark's moving, and
I'm building where I'm moving to, which is even more interesting. So
from scratch with his bare hands.
Yes.
But
from the earth to my home. Yes.
Back to our final moments with Kylesa here. The last tune there, Almost Lost, I kind of mentioned before we went into the last set that it's very Fugazi, like kind of a post-rock vibe. It's almost like if Converge and Clutch and Fugazi were sort of like writing a song together.
Yeah.
It's really, really kind of it's got that building tension that it seems like on each Converge record, there's sort of that like melodic, like 10-minute long song that's now on there, like Jane Doe and different things. It had that same sort of like building tension in that, but I don't know. I wrote down quite a few notes this morning, so Mark's like, and I've only heard this record 3 times today, so I don't know what he's talking about. But the other thing too is, I think we mentioned it before, especially on Static Tensions, is I think this pronounced use of sort of the krautrock can kind of rhythmic 70s kind of thing. It's not just like 70s prog psychedelic stuff.
Prog's kind of a dirty word to a lot of people. I think they think of Genesis or
Yes, Rush, or things like that.
A lot of that kind of stuff. And if nobody knows or if people aren't familiar with krautrock, check out like some Can stuff.
I'm on Duel 2,
Noi. It's across the board. It's a really bizarre kind of subgenre of progressive rock that's like, I think way more. It's more the avant-garde crowd than necessarily the way like the really commercial sounding kind of stuff.
Well, maybe we can throw a link up to a Can tune, at least for people to hear, or something like that.
Sure, I just recommend going and buying.
Yeah. Go get the soundtrack. Take Omego, the soundtrack album.
That's one of the most
Future Days. What's the other? There's one other brilliant one. It escapes me right now.
That's what the internet's for.
Yeah. Egg Bamiyashi.
Egg Bamiyashi or whatever.
Bamiyashi, yeah. That's a good one. So, get any of the Can stuff. It's all cool stuff. But speaking of sort of organic, hypnotic kind of 70-isms, we're going to kind of close things out with the last tune tonight, which is Only One. And it's just really sort of got this, I don't know, it's got a real kind of hypnotic thing going on there. And there's this infectious riff that's kind of very much from the Kylesa school of thought, I would say.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we hope you've enjoyed our musings and random tired knowledge and stuff on Kylesa, and we hope that you send us some feedback and things like that, because trust me, it helps, and we really do enjoy hearing from you guys, because it's kind of it's a weird thing to do this
It's like
into
doing
a vacuum.
Yeah, doing a radio show, throwing it in a
not-
bottle, throwing it in the water, and wait till somebody
yeah,
hears about it.
Yeah, hoping that somebody kind of hits us back. And I mean, we get like direct feedback from some of our friends who do kind of listen, but
I've got it.
Friends lie to us sometimes. Too.
We have a fair number of consistent messengers and everything, which we really appreciate.
So, but shoot us a line. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed the show. And for Recommend Metal Podcasts, I'm Jason,
and I'm Mark, and I will see you next week.
Here's only one. Enjoy.